Hi there. I just found out that the previous recording of how to format your research paper had really wonky audio. So I'm re-recording the whole thing. So starting from the beginning, I learned not long ago, or finally realized, that students often don't know how to format research papers and they really struggle with it. And so if you learn how to format a research paper, you can actually open a document and follow along with what we're doing here. You can make yourself a template that you can use for all the different styles of papers that you would use in your program. And so why format and why require all this specific formatting? It helps the reader, whether it's your professor or the reviewers for a journal, if they are used to seeing everything uniformly for all the submissions, they can focus on the content and they don't have to hunt around to find details that they expect you to write about. So we're going to do this in Microsoft Word. The same kind of style sheets work in any other word processing software. So I've opened up a blank document here, and just to orient yourself, first off, if you look at the top of your screen, you see that there's this little character, and this shows hidden symbols. If I turn it off, I'm looking at a blank page. If I turn it back on, I see a paragraph return. And this paragraph return is really important because, there we go, it shows you how you're formatting your document. It also shows you where you have text that forms, well, your paragraphs. And I find that a lot of times if people don't know how to use a style sheet, they try to format everything with a spacebar. So that's the spacebar. Or they'll format with the dreaded tab key. And what happens when you do that is if you have to change your font, and we are going to change our font, and you might change the font size, that's going to throw all of your formatting off, and then everything is going to look weird on your screen. And guaranteed that always is going to happen within an hour or two before your paper's due. And so we don't want you to panic. Would rather have you just make your lives easier. So I'm going to delete all this right here. And that's the hidden character. So next, let's come on over to your style sheet. So the styles that I have applied here are kind of the default that I have when I open up Microsoft Word. And yours might look a little bit different depending on what software you're using or what program you're using. But we want to key into headings, we want to key into body text and normal, titles and things like that, where we can apply the style to our paragraph. And that will be a big time saver, number one, for future papers once you've done it. And then the other is if you have to change something if you're switching from MLA to APA or whatever, you can actually just format your style sheet instead of trying to format the whole paper all over again. So if you spend this is going to, I don't know, be maybe 15 or 20 minutes, spend 15 or 20 minutes formatting something, make a template, save the template so you're not overwriting your own work. And then you'll have this for however long you're going to be submitting research papers, which is probably most students, the entire career as a student, right? Okay, so research papers generally have a title page. So I'm going to put in my research paper, and I'm not going to worry about the formatting yet, and it's going to be by me, myself, and I, even though the dog is sitting here. We'll leave the dog out of it. So that's my title, and then the next, if you have to put, for a certain class or those sorts of things, you can add all that in under your subtitle. If you're submitting to a journal, you generally put the contact information towards the bottom of the page, but usually this is all that goes on the title page. Something to think about if you're turning in your paper, if you're handing a hard copy to your professor, just be nice and double check if they want it in a binder or not. A lot of us don't like binders. If we get 50 research papers in 50 binders, that's a lot of bulk to carry around. So make sure that you just follow their instructions. You don't generally get extra credit for throwing it in a pretty binder. Sometimes it ends up being a little annoying. So just check. So let's go ahead now, and the next thing that's going to happen after this is your introduction. So here's what I see a lot. Introduction is going to start on the second page, right? So I scroll on down here and I return, and boom, now I'm on another page and I can come up and put introduction. So I have all these paragraph marks, paragraph returns here that are useless, and that's going to end up messing up your formatting later on. You don't want to do that. So we're going to delete all of these. And we're going to go ahead a little bit later and we're going to format introduction so it ends up going in the right place. It's not a bad thing to have one paragraph return in between paragraphs. When you start to have multiples, you need to start applying some formatting. And again, if we're going to do this once, you'll have it forever. So before I go further, I need to make sure that my margins are exactly as they are expected. So I'm going to come over to page layout here, click on the options, which are orientation, usually everything's portrait, so that should be fine. We're going to work on that a little bit later. But over here for margins, the last custom setting I used was 0.75 all around, but let's say that the requirement is 1 inch all around. You can just select this here. There are some instances where you would have, let's say, the left margin be wider than the right margin if you're going to bind it, and so you could select custom margins and put in that information here. But I'm going to cancel out of this because this is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Actually, no, I'm going to cancel. I'm going to say OK and just make sure that those are my margins. So I've got my margins. My next thing that I will do before I apply any formatting is I want to look at my font. And I'm a big fan, and a lot of people are, of serif fonts. Those have the little curly Q things at the end of them. But Times New Roman is a pretty common font to use in research. Generally, nobody's looking at Calibri. So I'm just going to select everything that I have here, and I'm going to select Times New Roman, and I'll select 12 points because that's, again, pretty much a standard. And so what I have on my page so far has changed, but this is becoming my normal paragraph, my normal design on which everything else is going to be based. So I'm going to select the paragraph formatting to just fix everything just as I want it. So when I open a paragraph, you're going to notice that line spacing says multiple 1.15 lines, and most research papers are going to be double spaced, so we need to select that. And let's get rid of the space after, only because when you have something double spaced, you generally don't add space in after. So you always can throw in, again, a single paragraph mark, perfectly fine, but multiple paragraph marks we want to avoid. So line and page breaks, the only thing generally that's going to be selected here is widow orphan control. That's going to make a difference when we start to format our headings. But for now, double spaced, nothing before, nothing after, click on OK. That's going to adjust things just a little bit. And now I want to make sure that everything that's normal from here on out has this formatting. So this down arrow on my style sheet, I'm going to select that. And I'm going to update normal to match selection. So from here on out, every time I have a paragraph where I've applied the normal style, that's going to look exactly like this. Okay, so this is my title. And if I select, if I select title here, that gives me something that's quite dramatic and the default. And again, I want to make sure that I follow the instructions, so from, wherever. So I'm going to come on over here, Times New Roman, 12 point, and this line under here is a border. So select the border options and say no borders, thank you. And then we want to make sure we want to get rid of this navy blue, so we're going to call that automatic. And maybe we want to have a bolded title. Maybe we're not supposed to. Let's say we are. Leave title just like this. And and I want to center it. Centering is really pretty. So now I am going to update title to match selection, and anytime I apply title, it will look like that. But for now, I'm going to apply subtitle and go through the same thing. So this is me, and I am going to get rid of the italics. I'm going to Times New Roman 12 point, double check my color, and center, and subtitle, update subtitle to match selection. And we may later on come back in to use certainly subtitle, and we'll have different types of headings as well. So making sure this looks the way we want it to look, and then we're going to come down to our introduction. If you have an abstract, that's going to be the first thing you put in your paper. We're going to skip the abstract and just write a standard research paper. So introduction would be heading level 1. If I click on heading level 1, I get something that's blue, 14 point, and Cambria heading. So I want to make this look like my introduction or my headings are supposed to. So let's say your professor tells you that all new sections need to begin on their own page. We can make that happen because our introduction should be on its own page. So first I am going to get the font to where it needs to be, Times New Roman. Bold is a lovely choice. We'll go over here. Let's make it 12 point and we want to check our paragraph. This looks a little off. This has 24 points before, and we don't really need 24 points before. And again, we can add in a little space later, but double spacing is key here. And everything should be left in line. We're good to go. Click, oh, nope, we're not. We got to come on over here. We want to make sure that Keep with Next is selected for any heading, so the heading's not hanging out by itself, and also keep lines together. So we don't want to break up headings across pages. We also, in our case, want heading 1 to have a page break before. So select that and you'll be good to go. So now, okay. And now our introduction is going to start on its own page, and we have one more thing to do, which is correcting the color. And then see what heading 1 looks like up here now. We're going to come on over here, update heading 1 to match selection. Boom, looks different. So now we have the meat of our paper. And then I'm just going to copy that a whole bunch. Whoops, that gave me a little tab there I didn't want. So where's my text? Ah, my mouse is going a little nuts here. There, let's try that. Okay, we don't have any periods in here, this is fine. And then we're going to have another paragraph. Well, let's break this guy up right here. Oh, my mouse is just misbehaving. And then we're going to have this here. All right, so then we have, let's say here's our method section. There's our method sections. We're going to make that another heading 1, and boom, it starts on another page. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? So for your normal paragraph itself, this first paragraph is going to have a left aligned, no little tab indents, but when you get to the second paragraph of any section, some journals want you to have, and some professors want you to have, your first line is 1/2 inch indent. So it's going to look like this. You can drag the little triangle over and put this here, but if you reapply the normal style to that, it comes back to left aligned. So what you want to do here is you want to drag this in, and then you can make a new style. So we're going to come over here, save selection as a new quick style, or you can apply other styles. And what we want to look for is we want to look for body text. So let's try save selection as a new quick style. Let's try body text and see what happens. I think this is going to tell us that name already exists for a built-in style. So if it's not showing up in your style sheet, you can dig that up from someplace else. A different style sheet, you can apply it from elsewhere. But let's go ahead and give it a different name. So we'll call it maybe text first line indent, and see if that gives us our own style. Yep, that's perfect. So we have our own little style that's showing up here on the top. So I can come down here, first line indent, everything else is normal. And so that starts to look like you want a research paper to look. So as you go through and you're writing your paper, you can type the text in and then come back and apply the formatting later. So let's go ahead now in our methods section. I'm going to copy some of my little paragraphs here because I want to get to that area where all of a sudden you've got some sort of matrix or a table and you don't know what to do with it. So let's scroll on up under methods. I want to make sure this first paragraph looks the way it's supposed to, so I formatted that as normal. But now I want to put in a table. So I'm going to come here, and my table is going to need to be, or my matrix, horizontal, landscape oriented. So here I am going to insert on page breaks. Insert a page break. So under page layout, that's where it is on this computer. I'm going to insert a section break and start the section break on a new page. Next page. All right, so I got a section break. I can come down here to my next page, and here I have table. There we go. All right, we'll call it table 1. And next, I want to format this as landscape before I insert my table, because my table will be auto-sized for the width of my page. So over here, orientation, I'm going to switch just this section to landscape. And so now you'll notice, I'm going to move my styles out of the way for a second. You'll notice this page looks a little different than that one when I select down here. So now I'm going to insert my table, insert table let's make it a, oh, probably, that'll look nice. So a 7 by 6. So here's my table. And when I'm putting in whatever information I have to put in, I can just plug it all in here. And then if you look up at the top, your table styles, there are all different presets that you can choose from. Some of these might fit the requirements for what you're doing, others not so much, so make sure that you double check. I'm going to go ahead and select this just because it's easy to see the different sections of your table. So you have your rows and you have your variables across the top. So this gives you the preset. You can plug in your information in your table and it's all set to go. So that makes things much, much easier. And then let's say you have to put your references in. After that, I'm going to come over here, page layout, breaks, section break, again, next page. And now I'm here, I'm going to put my references. And what I'll do with my references, that we want to make sure we don't format that as a heading 1, but we make it look like heading 1 because then there'll be a page break before it. So if I do heading 1 here, let's see what happens. Nope, I guess actually that's fine. So we want to make sure we don't have any weird page breaks. So my reference list would end up going here, but I want to make sure page layout, orientation, back to portrait. So now you can see, let me shrink this just so this is a little easier to see. This is a real common question I used to get from students all the time. How do you make the page look the other way? You just insert that section break there. So there I've got my table that's beautifully landscape. I've got my reference list that's again portrait. I've got my heading 1. I can use my heading 2, or I can put in my table title. So let's say table title is going to be heading 2. If I'm going to make tables and figures all the same heading, I can come on over here, go back to the beginning. This is probably getting a little boring now, Times New Roman, and I want to make this 12 point, and let's say they want it italics and bold, and I want to change this color so that makes heading 2 look different than heading 1. Come on over to heading 2, update to match selection, and there you are. So I've got all these different formatting things. The last couple things I need to do is insert my page numbers and my running head. If you're an APA style person, you're going to have a running head. So let's just do this for APA style just because. So in APA style, at the top of your first page, you will type in running head, and this is research paper. So that little running head is a short version of whatever your longer title is that's going to go at the top of your page. So I'm going to click out of the style window so you can see both pages here. Now I want to make sure that I have my page numbers and my running head in the heading. So if I come up here and I double click right at the top of the page, I don't know if you saw that, now I'm in my header for section 1, and so a nice little thing pops up here to give you some choices for what you can put here. So if I'm going to put down my running head was research paper, I'm going to put my caps lock on and say, nope, I'm going to put caps lock on, research paper, and then turn my caps lock off. Now the tabs are up here at the top of the screen, and the default usually is a center tab and a right tab. If I drag the center tab off the line, there's a right tab here, and for the right tab I can come over to page number, insert page number at current position, and then we want to make sure that we have a plain number here. So the plain number is really key because we don't need accent bars and other sorts of fancy stuff. And when we insert that, it's going to insert our number, but we then are going to need to format them, because what happens is, notice you've got on the left hand side, you've got a page number on your first page, and you've also got research paper on your first page, and you don't need that. So before we leave this, we want to make sure that our pagination starts with page 1. So we're going to come on over here and we're going to say page numbers, format page numbers, start at 0. So it's going to cause the first page to be 0, and our second page is going to be 1. Ta-da! Now we have 1. So the next thing we're going to do for this section is we're going to say give us a different first page, and it will take the heading off of the first page, and then when we click out of the headings, Oops, close header and footer. There we go. Now we have running head research paper, and maybe we just put a paragraph return after that. And then we've got our headings at the top of the page. But now we're going to scroll on down to see what happens with that landscape page. So the landscape page, we need to double click and we need to fix our heading. This says same as previous. We want to take that away so we can move the page number all the way over to the right. So let's click on unclick same as previous. And let's see, not linked to previous is right on up here. And then I'm going to drag my tab all the way over to the right. My number 4 goes exactly where it needs to go. So that's lovely. So I can close this header and footer. Before you leave, you'll come on down again and you want to look at your reference page here because the page number probably disappeared off the page. There we go. So that's exactly what happened. So on your references page, you're going to click in here, unselect same as previous, and then we'll come here. And sometimes you can't really drag that tab in, so from here we need to get rid of the tab. So we are going to go home, open up our paragraph, come on over here, tabs. You got a tab stop at 9. We don't want a tab stop at 9. We want one at about 6.5. So for now I'm just going to clear all and click on OK. And now I've got my page number here. I can come over and just use a little quick thing here. This is the left tab. I can make this a right tab and I can drag it across, put it here, and there's my page number. And then I come back to my header and footer and I close header and footer view. And now I've got pretty much all the details that I need to have everything formatted to put the content in my research paper. So one final note, make sure when you save this, I'm going to go ahead and save it as a template. Don't keep rewriting over old research papers because if you're like a lot of us, you end up rewriting a paper, disappearing it, and never getting your hands on it again. So just make sure that you save this. You can save it actually as a template, or you can call it a template and save it someplace where you can get it, put it in Dropbox or on Google Drive or OneDrive, and then you can open it and start filling in content to get your paper all ready to go and submitted without getting stressed out about the formatting later on. So hope this was helpful. Happy researching.